There's really nothing like an amazing professor or teacher, right? It can be life-changing. And I speak for myself, but also so many people when I say the best teacher in Bitcoin is none other than Executive Chairman of MicroStrategy, Michael Saylor. I have learned so much from him. He is an American entrepreneur, executive, inventor, author, and philanthropist. He co-founded MicroStrategy and previously served as the company's CEO for 33 years, from 1989 to 2022, and he is also the chairman of the board of directors. He is one of the leading advocates for Bitcoin around the world. Give it up for the Michael Saylor.
Well, actually, one of the more fun parts of my job is I get to work with the engineers at MicroStrategy, and we've got a few projects built on Bitcoin we've been working on. Last year, I had the opportunity to share with some of you our Bitcoin Rewards and Lightning project. This year, I've got something a little bit different. It's called Bitcoin Security. Bitcoin has a lot of use cases. I mean, the use case that I talk about a lot is store of value, and I think that's obviously worth quite a lot to the civilization. A use case that we're going to talk about with David Marcus at the end of the day is medium of exchange, and that's a very exciting session, and there's a lot of discussion about Bitcoin as a transactional settlement technology. But there's a third value proposition for Bitcoin, which I'm also very interested in, and it's a system of trust. You have this immutable, unstoppable, immortal, decentralized network, and it's storing data, and it's providing integrity, and it's executing transactions. And of course, the first grand idea was, first people thought, we'll move money without a trusted counterparty. And then they thought, well, I guess we could just keep the money in cyberspace forever without a trusted counterparty. And that was the medium of exchange and the store of value. But the third thought is, well, if there's something that I trust more than I trust any particular counterparty, maybe I can leverage that system of trust. And that was really the genesis of this next project. And I'm going to introduce it, and then Cezary, our head of engineering, is going to show it off. It's based upon this idea of decentralized identity. For those of you who, who use Instagram or YouTube or WhatsApp or maybe X, one of the frustrations has been, how can you trust anything that's posted? For a long time, I have a fake Michael Saylor channel that spins up every 15 minutes on YouTube. And the way that you know it's not me is I'm offering to give you 2 ETH for every ETH you send me. And that's definitely not me. But also, I'm offering to give you Bitcoin. I'll give you 2 Bitcoin for every 1 Bitcoin you send me. And it's very frustrating because I know it's not me, and a lot of people know it's not me, but some people seem to think it's me because I get a lot of emails, sometimes saying, I got tricked by that. And the solution oftentimes is a very laborious verification process. It may be expensive. It costs like $1,000 a month for a gold check from X Twitter. And it's a proprietary gold check because you can't take it to WhatsApp or YouTube, or your Microsoft environment. And of course, Meta's got their own little blue check thing, and then Google's got a different black check thing, and they don't work that well, and they're all very proprietary. And that's one of the challenges of digital identity today. You end up with a centralized identity, and maybe you're logging in with Facebook, or you're logging in with Apple, or you're logging in with Google, and you start thinking, well, what happens if one of those websites or one of those systems gets hacked? Or what if it goes down? Or what if one government somewhere decides to send a court order to one of those, maybe the Australian government sends a court order to one of these things and they take you off the network. So it's a lot of anxiety, it's very fragile, it's very brittle, it's very expensive, and it just doesn't work that well, and I think that's been a frustration of a lot of people. You end up with all sorts of challenges with these frameworks. How do you verify who you are? Is the data private? Do you really want some central organization to know everything you logged into? How do they interoperate? And that caused us to start thinking, wouldn't it be great if instead of a blue check or a green check or a gold check or a black check, what if there was an orange check? What if there was a cyber passport that you got once in your life and it was based on public-private key cryptography that you could take with you? If I paid a nickel for it or a penny for it, and it was anchored into an immutable, unstoppable, incorruptible network, that could be a global standard as opposed to some local nation-state standard. And then maybe I would log into that system using my private key and public key pair. And we saw a little bit of this pop up. One example is in the Nostr environment, when people started using public-private key pairs to log into various Nostr-compatible clients. And of course, we saw another example of this in Bitcoin, where the public-private key pair is how I move money around. And the most famous example or question here has been, well, will Satoshi ever prove they exist by digitally signing a message with their private key? And of course, we know that's possible in the Bitcoin environment, and it's worth, in this particular case, $65 billion to do it. But we haven't really levered this idea of public-private key cryptography anchored into a proof-of-work network for most commercial applications. And MicroStrategy thought maybe we could approach this idea of decentralized identity combined with Bitcoin and then create an enterprise application for it. So that was the genesis of this Orange project. And what you can see is on one side, you've got the decentralized identity, and that's the public-private key pair. On the other side, you've got the Bitcoin network, which is your system of record, which is really just a global fault-tolerant computer system controlled by no government, no corporation, no person. Our vision is to provide an internet-native, decentralized digital identity backed by Bitcoin. So we want to use the open standard of DID, and then we want to use the open standard of Bitcoin, and put the two together. And of course, why would you use Bitcoin? Well, it is fault-tolerant. It is censorship-resistant. It does use the most advanced cryptography. It's a lot better than most people's password managers and these federated systems. It's distributed. But of course, we come back to the issue of why is Bitcoin successful? It's open, permissionless, egalitarian. That's why it's successful. So an open standard means it could appeal to every country, and it could appeal to every company. There's no way that Apple wants to trust Google. There's no way that Google wants to trust Meta. There's no way that Americans will trust a Chinese company. There's no way the Chinese will trust an American company, right? And so how do you build a system for millions of counterparties that maybe don't trust each other, and how do you make it open? And of course, the beauty of Bitcoin is there's been so much development on public-private key cryptography. In the Bitcoin system, people spend obsessive amounts of time thinking about, seed phrases and seed phrase recovery and public-private key pair, and then multi-signature and signing devices. Because you're going to move a lot of money around, that's important. Well, what if we could leverage all that knowledge and all that research, but use it in order to fight cyber hacking and phishing scams and counterfeiting, and plug it right into an enterprise system? So, what are DIDs? you know, a unique identifier. You know, users control their own keys. You've got privacy, and you've got decentralized verification. You put the two together, and that's something really special, the DID plus the key pair. So what we're proposing is an open standard. It's DID:BTC. It's open and compliant with decentralized identifiers. It's simple, it's secure, it's extensible, and it's efficient. What's really exciting about this is you can integrate with this at the layer 2. So this is an open protocol to the world. Anybody could just work with this protocol and build their own stack of enterprise apps or retail apps or the like. But it's also interesting because it's extremely efficient. You could burn up to 10,000 of these identifiers in a single Bitcoin transaction. So imagine doing one off-peak transaction, and then you've captured or created 10,000 orange checks. And of course, they're good. To say they're good for life is maybe an understatement. I mean, they're good for lifetimes, right? Once you've created this, maybe it's good for 100 years or hundreds of years. So it's kind of a cool idea. It's a lot better idea for identity than I pay 5 different big tech companies $8 a month or $100 a month or $1 a month for the rest of my life in order to keep my verification check. This one you can take with you. The way we've integrated this is we've got an enterprise version. It's almost like there's a custodial implementation and a non-custodial implementation. And there's sort of, you can self-custody your ID and take it with you, and you can own it yourself. Or a company could actually issue this ID very quickly to every single employee. So maybe your company issues 9,000 of these orange checks, and then the company can manage the key pairs. And if a person's no longer an employee, then maybe that key pair is revoked. But if you wanted a retail or an individual identity, you could have that as well. And I guess in the future, you might even get to a multi-sig situation, which would be very interesting for this. The goal, of course, is let people to sign messages, to sign documents, to prove their identity, and to integrate this into all sorts of corporate systems. And so in order to show you our first implementation of that protocol, I want to ask Cezary to come to the stage, and he's going to introduce the first product we built on it, which we call MicroStrategy Orange.
Thank you, Michael. So Michael presented a very compelling case for why we need decentralized identity and DIDs, decentralized identifiers. He made an even more compelling case why it makes sense to anchor digital identity into the Bitcoin blockchain, protected by the strength and the security of the Bitcoin network. And then he introduced a specification that we open sourced today, the first draft of the specifications available on the MicroStrategy GitHub today, for how you actually do that. How do you create a decentralized identifier anchored into Bitcoin? And then he introduced this idea, well, now that we have the foundation, we can start building application platforms for consumer applications and for enterprise applications. And being an enterprise company, we've done exactly that. So today, I'd like to introduce MicroStrategy Orange, which is an enterprise platform for building decentralized identity applications on the Bitcoin blockchain. The platform consists of 3 fundamental pieces. At the heart of it is a service cloud hosted that allows you to issue those identifiers to your users in your organization. It also allows you to deploy applications, sort of prepackaged out-of-the-box applications that run on the MicroStrategy Orange platform. The Orange SDK allows you to take the same capabilities and integrate them into your own applications, into your own systems, into your own services. And like I said, the Orange apps are what's going to be sort of prepackaged point solutions that address specific digital identity challenges. And now I'd like to introduce the first Orange application that runs on the MicroStrategy Orange platform that addresses a use case that I think all of us can sympathize with. Despite the explosion in social networks and instant messaging, email remains the primary medium for business-to-business and business-to-consumer communication, with 350 billion emails sent every single day. Less than half of those emails are considered spam, and more than 1% are actively malicious. That's more than 3 billion phishing emails every single day. And those phishing emails are successful. Some 16% of all data breach incidents in organizations today can be traced down to a phishing email attack. Email security has been very, very slow to sort of evolve. There are standards that are slowly gaining adoption, standards like DKIM, which is the domain key identified mail, which are beginning to gain sort of good traction and provide integrity of the email, so you know the content has been modified. But email still suffers from one very fundamental challenge. Can you trust the identity of the person who claims to have sent it? The person's whose name and the domain address and phone number is at the bottom of an email. Interestingly enough, the solution to this problem is very well known and understood. Email needs digital signatures. Ironically, a standard that enables email to get digital signatures has existed for almost 30 years. It's S-MIME, Secure MIME. Yet it remains a very niche solution. Accurate data to sort of identify how much market share S-MIME has and what percentage of email is signed is very hard to come by. But it is understood that it's less than 1/10 of 1%. Why is it that it is so poorly adopted? Well, it comes to the fact that S-MIME sort of uses digital certificates to represent digital identity. Anyone who has been involved with deploying or rolling out S-MIME in an organization will tell you that procuring, managing, distributing, installing digital certificates is an absolute nightmare. Interestingly enough, at MicroStrategy several years ago, we rolled out a pilot of S-MIME just to our executive team, just to the CXOs. And we abandoned the project after only a few months without sort of extending the pilot to the whole organization, because we realized just how expensive and burdensome it would be to not only deploy it, but actually maintain it. In our estimate, rolling out S-MIME to an organization with 10,000 users might take up to 10,000 hours if you factor in all of the training and the ongoing support costs. So there's a better way. Orange for Outlook solves exactly that problem. It is, think of it as an orange check for your email, if you will. It brings the power of digital signatures to email. We focused on solving the two problems that plague S-MIME. First is enterprise deployment. How can we make it easy? Well, we can deploy with Orange for Outlook. We can deploy digital identities. Apologize, the clicker seems to have a mind of its own. With Orange for Outlook, we can deploy digital identities to 10,000 users in a matter of hours. That's because it does not rely on digital certificates. It relies on DIDs. We've also streamlined user experience to minimize those training costs and the training time. Let me now sort of show you what that looks like in practice. We're going to start with sort of the administrative experience of how do we actually provision this in a corporation. There's two prerequisites, which I won't cover here. The first one is, well, obviously you need your Office 365 administrators to actually push the Orange for Outlook add-in to all of your users. Second step is sort of a simple step of connecting Orange to your user directory. We do this all the time on the analytics side of a business. It simply requires putting in some certificates and sort of credentials to allow you to connect to your user directory. Once you're actually connected, once you've connected Orange to your Active Directory, you can now start issuing digital identities to your users. And it's really as simple as identifying the set of users you want to issue digital identities. You could do it manually, but in practice, you're going to do it by just importing users from the directory in bulk. And then in one single click, you can send every one of them an invitation to create their digital identity. This is also where you're going to manage existing identities. Obvious scenarios that we cover would be revoking an identity, for example, when an employee leaves your organization. Another use case is keys of a particular individual could get compromised, or the individual might simply forget the passphrase and is unable to deploy sort of their or transfer their identity to another system, and you want to be able to rotate their private and public keys, but without changing their decentralized identifier. All of that you could do from the administration portal. Now let's look at the onboarding experience. Onboarding is as simple as accepting an onboarding and invitation email. Now, of course, you may think, well, just that invitation email is an attack vector in itself. Of course, the invitation email is itself signed with MicroStrategy Orange, with obviously MicroStrategy's decentralized identifier. So once you've established that that email is genuine, you accept the invitation, and at that point, we're going to generate you your unique decentralized identifier and a public and private key pair. And we're going to send that decentralized identifier and the public key to the Orange server to be inscribed on the Bitcoin blockchain. From that point onward, you are ready to start sending signed, Orange-signed emails. And of course, the experience for the consumer is, for the sort of users of Outlook, is exactly as it was before. They simply author their email, but you will note every single email that they author will now be Orange signed. Now, you might wonder, what exactly does the signature include? Much like with the DKIM standard, where including in the signature the subject of the email, the body of the email, attachments, and additional metadata. So that's it. Send the email, and it's done. When you receive the email, as soon as you activate the Orange plugin, you can see if the email includes a digital signature, you instantly get a confirmation. Oh, look, looks like Mike sent me an email. Let's see what it says. Can you guys send me back any Bitcoin we're not using in development? We'll add it to our treasury, send it to this address. Do it today so we can include it in our next filing. Sure, Mike, I'll get on that right after this keynote. Oh, wait a second. Message is not signed with Orange. You know what? On second thought, I think I'll keep the Bitcoin for now. You get the idea, right? With Orange for Outlook, we've added one more layer of defense, sort of the final frontier of email security, knowing and being able to trust that the email received comes from the person that says they are the ones who sent it. So let's kind of look briefly what happens under the covers. Again, the user composes the email as they normally would. And then as soon as they click on send, we will hash the email content. Like I said, we include the subject, the body, attachments, and additional metadata. And then we sign that hash with the sender's private key. And we include that digital signature, which we call the Orange signature, in the headers of the email message. There's two important things that we should take note of here. Because we're just including the signature as a standard email header, the emails remain readable by any email client, and they can be relayed by any email relay and service. So we've not in any way restricted or changed the format of the email. So it's like the Orange for Outlook signed emails are sort of accessible and consumable by the whole entire email ecosystem. And this is also why we didn't take the final step of encrypting the email. We're just signing it. Because as soon as you encrypt it, now you're kind of stuck with a problem of how do I decrypt it? I need the Orange for Outlook plugin. It's a use case that we might add for sort of closed loop ecosystems. But we thought that just signing the email with the identity of the author and providing the integrity, proving the integrity of the email would be enough. Well, you can imagine what happens when you receive such an email. We will extract the identifier and the signature from the email headers. We will then use the identifier to locate the sender's public key using the Orange check server, ultimately from the Bitcoin blockchain. And then we will verify the signature. We are going to effectively decrypt the signature with a public key. That gives us the hash of the content. We're going to hash the content that we received, compare them. If that checks out, we know that the message has not been tampered with, and it's been sent by the person who owns the private keys, the person who owns the identity. So this is just the first application, right? It's a solution to a very specific problem that sort of plagues us in this day and age. But we see a huge opportunity, and this is just the beginning. Imagine any Bitcoin wallet, custodial, non-custodial. The obvious thing is every Bitcoin wallet out there should incorporate the capability of creating a Bitcoin-based digital identity. Many messaging platforms suffer from the same challenge that email does. When you get a text message, how do you know the person who sent you the text message? All you know is their phone number. Maybe it's your mom sending you a text message from a number you don't recognize saying, hey, can you send me a few extra bucks? You know, I'm stuck without my wallet. So obviously, we would want to include sort of an orange check for these different messaging platforms. Social media platforms, Michael already covered this, right? In addition to the blue check and the gold check and the black check and whatever check, if there was a universal orange check that traveled with you and could prove your identity across all the different social media networks and email and messaging. And you can imagine a lot of different applications that integrate digital identity into the authentication authorization process in e-commerce apps and fintech apps and enterprise applications. And the other opportunity we see and we want to pursue is integrating the digital identity based on Bitcoin with this bigger verifiable credential ecosystem, which sort of opens up another sort of large number of very interesting use cases where I can now credential my identity anchored to Bitcoin with a university degree, with a course certification issued by a hyperscaler, with your medical records and whatnot, present those, and then have those verified sort of all in a decentralized way, but with the ultimate identity living and being anchored to the Bitcoin blockchain. So to recap, today MicroStrategy introduced a new specification for how to anchor a decentralized identity into the Bitcoin blockchain. And we'd love you to, again, the specifications are available today. It will be added to the registry of all the DID specifications in a matter of days. Today we also, and we'd love you to start building applications. If you want to sort of work at that layer, by all means. Also, you can partner with us on refining and updating the specification. When we launch MicroStrategy Orange later this year, we would love for you to start integrating Orange capabilities directly with your applications, with your services, or deploy Orange in your organization in the form of Orange for Outlook. And finally, and most importantly, partner with us. We'd love to partner you. Again, if you're interested in building directly on the low-level specification, if you're interested in partnering with us to build Orange into a solution that you're working on, whether it's any of the use cases that I've mentioned or a new use case, we'd love to hear from you. You can reach out to Michael, to myself, and again, we'd love to partner with you. If you want to learn more about Orange, we have a booth just outside this door where we have product owners, product managers, architects, and engineers, including the architect who built the BTC specification, and they'll be, I'm sure, very happy to share with you more of what we've done, what we plan to do next, and the bigger vision. So thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the conference.